Have you ever been in this situation? You walk through the doors of a nearby Conbini, and all of a sudden you hear things like, いらっしゃいませ。袋はいりますか？ポンタカードはお持ちですか？少々お待ちください。次にお待ちの方どうぞ。Hi everyone, welcome back to the Virtual Nihongo channel. Today we're talking about some very common Japanese phrases used in convenience stores. Whether you're going to Japan on a business trip, for study abroad, or as a tourist, knowing these phrases can be useful. When you enter the Conbini, the first thing you'll probably hear is いらっしゃいませ. It basically means welcome, and you don't need to say anything in response. If you do want to respond to the greeting, you can simply nod your head in the direction of the ten-in, which means worker. Just a small nod, like, that's fine. In this video, we're going to use an example so you can better follow along with what you might hear at the Conbini store. Let's say you pick up 3 things today at the Conbini. The first is ice cream, or ice cream. The second is a can of biru, or beer. And the third is a kare udon, curry udon. We're going to break up the items you bought into 3 categories. First is normal items, 2 meals, 3 age-restricted items, such as beer, cigarettes, and etc. Congratulations, you've already overcome one of the biggest issues of shopping in Japan: choice in decision. Now you're ready to pay. Sometimes convenience stores have a serufureji, but in most cases, there will always be a staffed register you can check out at. You'll notice there are some set phrases we use to politely accept or decline something. While many textbooks teach students to use iie when we want to say no, it's more common to hear ya or ie. When people speak fast, they usually shorten words like iie. Hi remains the same for yes in polite speech. There's also another important point I'd like to cover. There's several different formality levels in Japanese which fall into 2 categories: tamego to keigo. Tamego is used for casual conversation, while keigo might be used for anything from addressing a customer to talking to one's boss. Since you're the customer in this situation, you'll be addressed in keigo. This can sometimes confuse beginner Japanese learners because while most textbooks teach you keigo, they usually teach it in the context of you addressing your professor or teacher, not someone else addressing you as a customer. Sentences can sometimes end differently in keigo than you may be used to. For example, sentences ending in 何々お持ちでしょうか means someone who's lower than you on the social hierarchy is asking you if you have something. When you hear 何々ましょうか or 何々よろしいでしょうか, you can think of it as that person asking you for permission to do something. If they ask you something like 何々いりますか, it means they are asking whether or not you need something. The ending of each sentence really matters in Japanese. Now that we have these sentence endings in mind, let's go back to our example. When you go to purchase at the reji, there might be a line, especially if it's a busy time of the day. Usually, there are stickers or marks on the ground telling you where to stand. Once the tein are done checking out the customer in front of you, they will say something like 次に待っている方どうぞ or 次にお待ちの方どうぞ. They do talk fast. You put your items on the counter, and while the clerk starts scanning, they might start asking you questions. The first question they ask might be ポンタカードはお持ちですか? This question is asking you if you have a rewards card. If you don't have a rewards card, which is probably 99% of people watching this video, you can simply say いや持ってないです. Sometimes they will also ask you if they can sign you up for a rewards card. You might hear お作りしましょうか? If you don't want to deal with this process, you can say いや大丈夫です。ありがとうございます. Another very common phrase, and one which tends to be a little famous for confusing beginners, is when you're asked if you need a bag. Fukuro, which is the word for plastic bag, might not be covered in most beginner Japanese language classrooms. One way the tein might say this is 袋がいりますか? Another way might be 袋をご利用ですか? Which is, will you use a plastic bag? As you can see, there are a lot of ways a clerk might ask this question. One trick you can use is just listen for お袋, which is the polite way to say plastic bag, or just 袋. If you will need a plastic bag, say はい、お願いします. If you don't need one, you can say いや、大丈夫です. Do you remember that カレーうどん? When you buy a meal, there's some questions that the店員 might ask you. First question we'll cover is お弁当温めますか? This phrase means, can I warm your bento or bento box? Note that not all hotels in Japan have a microwave, so it can be very helpful to let the tain heat your food up for you. While the tain is waiting for your food to be heated up, they may tell you to wait a little bit. It's very common to hear the phrase 少々お待ちください. Sometimes they will direct you to wait off to the side of the reji in order to help check out other customers. Finally, there's one last question before we end this section. This is if the tain asks you whether or not you will need chopsticks, or forks, or spoons. Chopsticks is ohashi, fork is fork, and spoon is spoon. Then add on the verb to use, which is 使う. In the polite form, it might be said as お箸はお使いになりますか? フォークはお使いになりますか? スプーンはお使いになりますか? You might also hear いりますか instead, which, as we already mentioned, means to need when used in this context. Some products, like cigarettes and alcohol, are age restricted. In Japan, you cannot consume these things if you are under the age of 20. In order to confirm you are of age, you have to press a confirmation button on the screen. When you purchase an age-restricted item, you may hear the phrase 年齢確認ボタンを押してください. This translates to, please press the age confirmation button. You shouldn't attempt to purchase age-restricted items underage in Japan, as the consequences could be severe. Okay, we're almost done, but we still have to cover one of the most important sections, paying. Let's go back to when you were looking at items at the convenience store. Did you notice two numbers on the price tag? It is common for price tags to have the base price and tax included amount on them. Sometimes they will also have tax already included in the amount. The word for this is 税込み. When the tain is done ringing up your items, they will tell you the total amount. Try to listen for the word お会計, which is a formal way to say bill, like the bill at a restaurant or for a purchase in Japanese. お会計781円になります。お会計1980円になります。お会計20185円になります。These are some examples of what you might hear. You may also hear the sentence お支払いはどのようになさいますか? Which means, how do you want to pay? There are a couple ways to respond to this question. If you're using an IC card, like Suica or Ikoka, you can simply say the name of the card followed by 何々でお願いします. Like, Suicaでお願いします. Ikokaでお願いします. You may even shorten this down further to Suica de or Ikoka de. If you're using a credit card or debit card, you can say カードでお願いします. If you're paying by cash, you can say 現金でお願いします. The last thing the clerk might ask you is if you need a receipt. You might hear レシートご利用ですか? If you don't want the receipt, you can just respond in the same manner as if they asked you. レシートご利用ですか? いらないです. Or はい、お願いします. Before we end this video, I also want to share with you some knowledge about learning languages in general. Everyday phrases are also helpful because they show us how to use words in context. So I recommend you to learn phrases alongside your regular vocab. There are also a lot of other things you can do at the convenience store, like print out certificates and pay your bills. In the future, we might also cover these situations through additional videos. I want to thank everyone for helping us reach 3,000 subscribers. Thank you. It means a lot to us to see this many people interested in our channel. If you enjoyed watching, please consider putting a comment down below about what you would like for us to cover next. Also, if you have any suggestions or questions, please feel free to let us know. Thanks for watching again. See you next time.